All right, let's start off by saying Barak, Yahawah, Hashem, Yahawashi, Hashem, Rawchaa, Qadash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Revelation chapter 12. And I've been wanting to get to this for a couple of days now. I had watched the video Elder Apostle Hart did and mentioned going into the breakdowns of Daniel 12 or Revelation 12. And I wanted to jump on that, the Revelation 12 part, because this is a very important chapter in prophecy, in history, and just to understand pretty much certain aspects of Revelation chapter 12. So Lord's will, this will be an edifying lesson, and we're going to get into it. We're going to go through it, as the Spirit gives us utterance and allows us, to break it down. So Revelation 12:1, it says, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars." And basically that's dealing with the nation of Israel. Now the Roman Catholics teach that this woman is talking about Mary. It is not talking about Mary, because the reason why they say that is because they're trying to exalt the woman with that Queen of Heaven worship. You had this devil, Abu, that came down to Abu Kamar, that came down to the camp years ago on 34th with a shirt of what they call the Virgen Guadalupe, Virgin Mary, whatever the case may be. And he didn't come straight. He came like a demon, because he knew who he was. He knew who we were, but he tried to act like he was just a passerby or somebody that just happened to be in the audience. And he kept saying little things like, well, I believe, she's in I think it speaks about her in the book of Revelation, the 12th chapter. So he was a demon, and he got exposed, But anyway, nevertheless, this is not talking about Mary. This is talking about the nation of Israel. You can go to the book of Genesis where Joseph had the dream, of the 11 stars bound to him, the sun and the moon bound to him, which represented his father, his mother, and his 11 brothers. You can go to scriptures where, like Daniel 12, where it speaks about the nation of Israel being as the stars of heaven, so on and so forth, to prove that this is dealing with, the nation of Israel as a whole. Now, the sun represents knowledge, the moon represents wisdom, and it was clothed, the nation of Israel is clothed with that. Even though right now you have a bulk of the Israelites that don't know the knowledge, but it says that they have a zeal of the Most High, but it's just not according to knowledge, because this knowledge was given to us. And the biggest clue here is 12 stars, the crown of 12 stars, which represents the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. And it says, "And she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered." Because at the time, when prior to this being written, you had the Romans that were persecuting the nation of Israel. They allowed us to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments, so on and so forth. But, there was still tribute that had to be paid to the Romans, and that became harsher and harsher. And this is why you had many different revolts of the zealots against the Roman Empire, because of the heavy taxation that was going on back there. Because remember, there were a lot of wars that the Romans were fighting that they needed revenue. This is why eventually, through all of those wars, even though they were gaining ground and gaining resources, they were losing, because they had to build up their military more and more, meaning they had to devalue their currency, which was the denarius back then, to make it, so that they could to stretch it out so that they can pay all of these soldiers that they had out on the front lines. And eventually that's one of the things that brought down the Roman Empire, was the overstretching of their military. So when we go to Matthew 11:11, "Verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, there hath not risen a greater than John the Baptist." But remember, John the Baptist fell out the truth, right? This is Yahawashi's words speaking about John the Baptist, saying that he is the greatest among the prophets. It says, notwithstanding, he that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. Right, so the point now is verse 12. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the moment that Yahawashi was speaking, the kingdom of heaven, which represents the nation of Israel, suffered violence, and the violent take it by force. So they were, in a position where they needed deliverance because they were being persecuted by the Roman Empire. Now let's go from there to the book of Isaiah 66 and I'll start at 6, even though it's 666. A voice, Isaiah 66 and 6, a voice of noise from the city, a voice from the temple, a voice of the Lord that rendereth recompense to his enemies, because eventually the Lord Yahawah is going to judge Esau, for all of the crimes they committed, going back to the Greeks, the Romans, and everything else in between, unto this very day, America being the final, Edomite nation, to rule. So verse 7 says, before she travailed, meaning before she started having these birth pains, meaning the nation of Israel, she brought forth. All right, because it was already destined from the beginning that the nation of Israel was going to, suffer these things and also be delivered from them. See, the script has already been written, and that's what most people don't get or understand. The script has already been written. All that's happening right now is it's all playing out, on the earth today. It says, before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. See? So before any of this happened, we were already delivered of a man-child. That man-child being who? Yahawashi. Because Yahawashi was set up to be this lamb from the foundation of the earth. Before the earth was even created, he was already ordained. Just like the elect were ordained before anything you see was created, Yahawashi was already ordained to come down, suffer for us, and to be the ultimate sacrifice to bring us back into the good graces of the Most High Yahawah, and to deliver us from the hand of our enemies. You see, it says, who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? As soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Yeah, because it was already destined, predestined. And this is what most people don't understand. They don't understand predestination. They don't understand reincarnation. They don't understand the elect. This is why you even have Israelites among them, that know that the Israelites woke up to the Israelites trying to gather all Israel. You're not going to gather all Israel, because all Israel was not meant to wake up. The only ones that are meant to wake up are the elect. And we have been the only group out there that was speaking about the elect for a long time. Now others are starting to kind of come around to those terms, but we have been the only group that really was teaching about the elect. The rest of these other groups were too focused on trying to gather the whole nation of Israel. The Most High is not dealing with the whole nation of Israel right now. He's only dealing with the elect. It says, shall I bring to the birth and not cause to bring forth? Right. So in other words, like if a woman is pregnant, the Lord is saying, will I cause her to be pregnant and bring her to that point and not deliver her? And this is symbolic of the nation of Israel. Saith the Lord Yahawah, B'Hashem Yahawashi, shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, saith thy power? Rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad with her, all ye that love her. Rejoice for joy with her, all that ye that mourn for her. Right, because the elect, these are the ones that's going to be sighing and crying for all of the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. So now let's go back to the book of Revelation, chapter 12. And let's go back to the verse that we left off at, which was the second verse. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. Right. And that child that was to bring the deliverance of the nation of Israel is and was Yahawashi. It says in the verse 3, it says, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 crowns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. Now, when you read further down into the seventh verse, it speaks about, this dragon making war with Michael, and his angels. Meaning, when Yahawashi comes back, Michael and the other angels, that this dragon is talking about the spiritual demon Satan, and there's going to be this war up in heaven, meaning in the spiritual realm. That's all total nonsense. That is nothing but mythology. That is nothing but cunningly devised fables. All right. When you read the third verse and you go to other precepts within the book of Revelation, it lets you know what this dragon with the 7 heads and 10 horns is. It lets you know that it meant that it is a representation of men. It's a representation of empires that were coming together, binding together. That's what the crowns represent. It represents the leaderships. It represents the empire or the dynasty status. Okay, it ain't talking about the spiritual demon Satan. And they never, in the church, these churches, they never touch on that because they don't know that. Because all they do is they just go with what they were taught. And most Christians do not study unless they're in that scholarship, scholarly, ilk, so to speak. All right. So this dragon, with the 7 heads and 10 horns, remember it said red. Why is it red? Because all of the nations of Esau that are combined to make this, or should I say all of the tribes of Esau that are combined to make this one red dragon are all Edomites. And the word Edom goes back to the Hebrew word Adawam, which means red. All right. And the 7 heads represents the Greeks, the Romans, the Greeks, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, Germania Major, Germania Minor, and Britain. Those are the 7. And out of that union, or those empires of Esau, came America, which is the 8th, which is of all 7. All right. And the 10 horns represent today the EU. Back then they had the ancient names as the Ostrogoths, the Visigoths, the Burgundians, the Suevi, the Vandals. You had the Anglo-Saxons. You had the Burgundians. If I didn't mention them already, you had the Alemanni. You had the Gauls, and so on and so forth under the ancient names. Today they go by different names. Of course, you have the 10 Common Market, which used to be the EEC, or the European Economic Community. Today they're known as the European Union. They started off as 6 member nations. You could do the research. Then eventually over the years they grew, to 12, which was really 10 when you really look at it. Their flag is a blue background with 12 yellow stars, and those 12 yellow stars are really 10 because that's what the prophecy stated. But Esau added, and this is why even to this day they continuously add more and more members to the European Union when the original members were 6, and really it was built up to 10, because when you look at the 12 that make up that those stars, is really 10 of them. All right, because you have the United Kingdom, then you have Ireland. That's all part of the same thing. Then you have Portugal and Spain. That's the same one. That's the same head. But Esau likes to try to offset things. All right. And you can continue on with that, and you can build a lesson off of that. Just the 7 heads and 10 horns. It says, and his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven. Right. Because during the time when, this dragon, which letting you know that this is speaking about that the ancient Roman Empire, because they were one of those heads. And in Revelation 17, it spoke about, matter of fact, let's get there real quick. We'll come back to this. Revelation 17, because and with these chapters, you can go in depth, and the lesson could last for hours, but in the interest of time, we're going to condense it. Yahawashi. So we go to Revelation 17, right? I'll start at 9. And here's the mind which hath wisdom, right? So now he's breaking it down to the Apostle John, right? What these 7 heads and 10 horns represent, and if these so-called Christians would take the time to study, which they don't, they would see that, wait a minute, if this is the case, And this is that dragon. So how can the dragon in Revelation 12 that fought against Michael and his angels, how can that be talking about Satan? Think about it. And here's the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains. Now, in the scriptures, mountains, sometimes it's speaking about an actual mountain. Many scriptures on that, when Yahawashi said, when you see the abomination that make it desolate, flee to the mountains. Or it can represent, rulership, governments, such as when you used to have the G8 summits, then you had, now it's G7 summits. I'm not sure if they changed from that. They're constantly changing shit. But the G7 and the G8s were the top 7 or 8 governments coming together for a meeting, right? Which they called a summit. Now, when you look up the word summit, if you're not lazy, you look up the word summit, and the word summit means the peak of a mountain. Why did they call it that? Because you had the top governments coming together to hash out whatever policies or legislations they had to hash out. So these 7 heads represent 7 mountains, and the 7 heads were red, the great red dragon, which were Edomite nations, all right, coming together for this purpose, on which the woman sitteth. And who is the woman? America. America sits upon those 7. Why? Because she is a part of those 7, and they are carrying her. And there are 7 kings, which is letting you know it's talking about men. It's not talking about the spiritual demon Satan. So when we go from here to Revelation 20, and it speaks, matter of fact, let's get there real quick, and we'll come back to verse 10. Revelation chapter 20 and verse 2. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. So this is all speaking about the same thing. And what we're reading right now is in Revelation 17:10, and there are 7 kings. So that dragon, the Satan, all that all is a representation of the Edomites, the so-called white people, so you could understand. All right. When you go to 2 Thessalonians, it said that these devils will be coming after the workings of Satan, with all lying and as it's written in 2 Thessalonians. So it's all a representation of the same thing when you put precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little. And here it says, the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth, and there are 7 kings. Like I said, this is proof that great red dragon is not talking about the spiritual demon Satan, right? 5 are fallen, because by the time the Apostle John had this vision, 5 of those empires were in subjection under the Romans. Remember, around 25 BC or so, the ancient Greek empire was absorbed. The ancient Greek empire was absorbed into the Roman Empire. The last 2 rulers of the Greek Empire, which was Cleopatra the 7th and Ptolemy the 13th, all right, they fell under the rulership of the Roman Empire, and they were absorbed into the Roman Empire. Sometimes you hear them call it the Greco-Roman Empire. You see? So that's when they absorbed it. And all them other regions out there among these European nations that formed the 7 heads, they were all in subjection under the Roman Empire at one time. The British had not really been established just yet. Those are new territories. So by the time the Roman Empire fell, the British Empire had not been established fully yet. All right, it says, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, because the 5 that fell, which were the Greeks, the French, the Spanish, Germanian Major, Germanian Minor. The 1 that is was at the time of this vision that John was having, was the Roman Empire. And consequently, the Roman Empire, the Edomite Roman Empire or pagan empire, fell around the same time when the Apostle John was having these visions, because the last Edomite emperor to rule among the Roman pagan empire was Domitian, which was the son of Vespasian and the brother to Titus, which they called the Flavian dynasty. All right. That was the last ruler. So by the time the Apostle John had this vision, the Roman Empire was still in power, but they would shortly come to their demise. Right. It says, and the other is not yet come, because the other, being Britain, hadn't been established yet as a empire, or an empire ruling over the known world at the time. It says, and when he cometh, meaning when he is established, he must continue a short space, because they didn't rule for very long. Even though behind the scenes the Rothschilds are manipulating the world from the city-state of London, but as a whole, America took over that empire status from the British Empire. All right, and the British Empire in Scripture is known as the mother of America, or Babylon the Great. All right. It says, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, because America is that beast that was and is not, because it was in division at the time, but it wasn't time for them to rule as of yet. And they are that woman also. It says, and is of the seven, because it's a part of all seven, and goeth into perdition, meaning goes into destruction. So from the moment that America was established, they were established to be destroyed. This was the place, the final capital, for lack of better words, final capital, final empire of Esau's rulership before they would fall down. All right. And we're witnessing the total collapse of this place, a total corrosion of America. Right. So when we go back to Revelation 12, now if we were to go right now to the 7th verse, it would go into that whole fall. Of the 8th going into perdition, because you're going to have this great war, and Michael, Yahawashi, Michael, and the archangels and the angels are going to come and fight against Esau, and the other nations. And where's this war going to take place? Up in the heavens, meaning up in the upper atmosphere where we can look up. Why? Because you have planes, you have helicopters, drones, so on and so forth up there, that are going to be fighting this final war, World War III, as the scriptures calls it, war. And they're going to stop, because they're going to see this great, something that they've been fearing, because I can't even say that they haven't seen it, something that they've been fearing for a long time, which is the appearance of Yahawah Bashem Yahawashi, with the angels, coming to take this place out. So they're going to stop fighting each other, and they're going to turn their energy to fight against the Lord. And then the Lord is going to annihilate them. All right. So going back to Revelation 12:4, it says, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, meaning the Roman Empire drew the third part of the stars of heaven, meaning at that time when the Roman Empire was in power, you had three major tribes, which were of the southern kingdom, there in Jerusalem and those surrounding areas, meaning the Judites, the Benjaminites, and the Levites. Then you had a sprinkle of the other tribes, but those are the three predominant tribes. That was the third part of heaven that he drew with his tail, and did cast them to the earth, because eventually what happened? 70 AD happened, and there was a great insurrection against the Israelites back then, because there was prophecy. It says, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Why? Because at this time, Yahawashi was being born, meaning during the time when Herod was on the scene, meaning the patriarch of the rest of the Herods. Yahawashi was on the scene, and he wanted to destroy Yahawashi, because they bought their way into, by manipulation, by murder and all of that, they bought their way into the kingship of Israel. And they were not the rightful rulers, because they were not Israelites, they were Edomites. So when he heard about Yahawashi being born, he got nervous and scared, and all of these sambos among Israel were all nervous also, right? It says, verse 5, and she, meaning the nation of Israel, brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto the Most High and to his throne. Right. And when you read the book of Matthew, the 2nd chapter, it goes into the history, of Herod and the whole exchange between the wise men that came from the east to worship Yahawashi because they saw the star, or they saw the ship, the chariot up in the heavens, and they followed it. They were following it, and they said, where is he that is born, king of the Jews, because we came to worship him. And he was like, well, what are you talking about? What king? What? I'm the king, So he got nervous. So being the devil, instead of coming straight out, he said, well, look, when you find him, let me know, because I want to come worship him too. Nah, but he wanted to put him to death because he saw that his rulership was being threatened. All right. This is why he bugged out and killed, I believe he killed Miriam. He killed Miriam, which was a princess of one of the Hasmonean princes. He killed certain of his children. And he was killing everybody. Anybody that had anything to do with being the heir to the throne, he was killing everybody. And he tried to kill Yahawashi, but he was not successful. It says, so you can read the book of Matthew, the 2nd chapter, and it goes into that history, right? And this is why, Yahawashi, Joseph, Mary, and Yahawashi went from, Bethlehem down to Egypt, and from Egypt back to Bethlehem, but didn't make it to Bethlehem because Herod's son was ruling, and Joseph went up to Nazareth. This is how Yahawashi ended up in Nazareth. All right. And it was all set up to be controversial because the Most High didn't want everybody to get this truth. This is why Yahawashi became what? A stumbling block. Remember the old man Simeon told Mary, this child is set up for the rise and fall of many in Israel. So the Lord set it up that way on purpose to throw off those that he didn't want. Because it was very easy for Yahawashi to tell them wicked Pharisees and them after they said, well, look, can you search the scriptures? It doesn't say anything about anybody, the Savior coming out of Nazareth, or Galilee. And he could have easily said, look, I was born here. That's where my father used to go every year, to pay the taxes there. I was born there. And what happened was so on and so forth. Herod, this, that, and the other. He persecuted the children because he was trying to get me. And my father, the angel in a dream, told my father to flee down into Egypt. And after that, to come back. But he went up to Nazareth. He could have easily told that history. But it wasn't meant for them to get it. Period. It says, verse 6, and the woman fled into the wilderness where she hath a place prepared of the Most High. So the wilderness represents, the land of Africa, land of Ham. And that's where the bulk of the Israelites fled. Now they fled up into Europe. They fled up into Asia Minor. They fled up over there into places like India, so on and so forth, because you had communities of Israel all over that area. This is why during the time of the Passover, they would come 3 times a year, and they would come from all different walks, from all different places, but the bulk of the place where they ran to was down into Africa, because you had great Israelite communities down there. You had great communities in Cyrene. You had Simon of Cyrene. Why was he there? Because he happened to be there because it was around the time of the Passover, the one that helped Yahawashi carry the cross. Then you had great communities of Israelites down in Alexandria, Egypt, and other places down there, So Israel was all over the place. So it was a thing of refuge for Jake to split out of the land of Israel and go down into the interiors of Africa to find refuge among those other Israelites. This is why the angel told Joseph to go there, to go down into Egypt. He took them down there also to fulfill prophecy. But you had a great community of Israelites down there. That's why it says the woman fled into the wilderness. And when did this happen? This happened during the time of roughly around almost 70 AD, beginning around 66 AD, when there was a great insurrection upon Israel back then. Yahawashi warned, the ones that could see, for lack of better words, of this great persecution that was coming. Matthew 24:15. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, which was who? The Romans, spoken by Daniel the prophet, which proves that this prophecy goes back to what? Goes back to Daniel the 9th chapter. And this proves that this was fulfilled during 70 AD. But you still have these nut jobs among the so-called Christians that are speaking about, the 7-year tribulation period. That already happened. That already took place. That was already fulfilled. The Lord said it would be fulfilled when this particular thing happened. He said, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Yeah. And that began in 66 AD and ended in the beginning of 74 AD, which was a period of about 7 years. All right. It says, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, right? Because it was a great slaughter. This is not talking about now. This was talking about then. In the book of not Leviticus, the book of Luke, the 21st chapter, and the book of, and I think it's also the 19th chapter. It speaks about, but Luke 21 speaks about this time here when the Romans would come in would be the days of vengeance. And this is when the Lord would, avenge himself on Israel for being wicked. And he used these devils, the Romans, to do that. So that's what we're reading in Revelation 12. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had the place prepared of the Most High. Now, this place prepared of the Most High is a representation of America, the place where they were brought to, to flee. This was the place that was prepared, because America served two purposes. It served the purpose of, a place of refuge for the northern kingdom, then a place where the other tribes, the 3 tribes, are going to be brought to the southern kingdom, and the unity of those tribes coming back together. And also it was going to serve as a place of judgment for Esau and for those Israelites that didn't repent, and also for the nations, because they're going to get their judgment here too. So that this place, there were many strokes that this place was used for. So Hosea 1:10, it says, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. This is another scripture you can use for the stars. And it shall come to pass, meaning future tense, that in the place, meaning here in America, where it was said unto them, you are not my people. And to this very day, no matter how many times we go into the scriptures and break them down and prove that we are the Israelites, it's still being said, nope, you're not the Israelites. You're not the people of the Most High, because those people over there in the land of Israel are the people of the Most High. Meanwhile, we have to jump through hurdles and hula hoops on fire to break down and give proof that we are the Israelites, and those people over there are never told to prove that they're being Israelites, which they're not. They're Edomites, and they know that. The top ones among them. So it says, and in the place where it was said unto them, you are not my people, there shall be said unto them, you are the sons of the living power. And this is where we're at right now, here in America. Even to this very day, we're being told that we're not Israelites. We're just niggas, spooks, spics, wetbacks, slaves, servants, tontos, anything but who we really are. Now, let's go from there to the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter, and the 6th verse. It says, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians, right? Because you had the southern kingdom and you had a sprinkle of the northern kingdom there. And they were brought over to this side of the world. They were sold by certain Hamites. They were sold by Ishmael. They were sold by other Israelites. Yes, they were sold by other Israelites also. And they were sold to the Grecians, which are the Edomites. Because when you go into this word Grecians here, it goes into the Hebrew word Yawan. In English is Javan. This is where you get the word Ionia. You know, those all are words or ancient names that apply to that mainland of Greece. All right. And the reason why I called them Grecians, which they're not really Grecians, they're Edomites, was because that was the first stronghold that they took down, beginning with Macedonia. And they took over over Greece. Because when Esau took over that place, the Greeks became the first Edomite empire to rule that region. That's why it says civilization started with the Greeks. No, that was the Edomite civilization started with the Greeks, because that was the first stronghold that they took over in Europe from the dark-skinned Etruscans, the dark-skinned Japhites, you know, that were in those regions. This is why you see white-looking people calling themselves Europeans, you know, because they took over the Japhetic people, the brown-skinned Japhetic people of those lands, and pushed them out. All right. And that's why they're identified with the Grecians. Not that they go back to Japhet, because they don't go back to Japhet. They go back to Esau. They are Shemites, Shemitic, Hebrew, Edomites. All right. It says, the children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their borders. Right. And they did. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither you have sold them. And what place is that? America, because they were brought over here, transatlantic slave trade. And will return your recompense upon your own head. And this is where we at in prophecy, letting Esau know that the Most High is about to judge his red ass. So going back to Revelation chapter 12, right? So there's a lot of history, you know. That's why, you know, you can breeze through it, but it's going to be hard because there's points that need to be made. Just on this 1:6 verse, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had the place prepared to the Most High, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. That 1,260 days, or 42 months, or 3.5 years. Which those 3.5 years, or these days here, are prophetic, and those prophetic days there represent 350 years. All right. Now you had slaves that were being brought here back in the 1500s. All right. But the bulk of the slaves were brought to the shores of America 1619, you know, around that time period, 1619, 1620. That's when the bulk were brought over here. Now, if you take 350 years and you add it to 1619, you're going to get 1969. 1969 was a very pivotal year for the truth and for America, because at that point, this is when the Elder Abba Bivens was out there teaching the word. He was pushing the word, you know, heavy. Around this time, Esau so-called sent his space shuttle, and they landed on the so-called moon. They landed on the moon, the so-called moon landing, which is BS. But this was that time when they said they landed on the moon. And that was a great event that took place. But that great event that took place was also a great event in prophecy for the downfall of Esau. You know, so from that point, the truth was being pushed and Esau's empire was falling. So that was a very pivotal year. So after that 350-year period, from the time the bulk of the slaves were brought here to that point, that's that 3.5 days, or that 1,260 days, or that 42 months. All right, that and it's no coincidence that all of these great things were happening at that moment. You know, you can't make this up. All right, so now we're gonna skip from the 6th verse further down, because the 7th verse to around the 12th verse goes into the future, when this great war in heaven would happen. And in the interest of time, like I did a lesson on this before, and I kind of broke it up into two parts, just to kind of go and finish off the rest of the history, because those few verses from the 7th to the 12th verse goes into this great war in heaven, and Lord's will I could do a separate lesson on that. So verse 13, it says, and when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. Right, because Herod, under the orders of the Roman Empire, he persecuted the nation of Israel. The Roman Empire eventually got tired of Jake revolting against them because of the heavy taxation, and they brought a great slaughter against Jake. And it was the armies of the Romans that compassed Jerusalem. And you better believe that you had other Israelites that knew they were Israelites, that may have had Greek and Latin names that were a part of it, because the top general that actually helped take down the temple, burn the temple, and destroy Jake back then was Tiberius Julius Alexander. And he was a Jake. He was an Israelite. He knew he was a Jew, but he had a disdain for his nation, for him being he didn't want to be an Israelite. He wanted to be a Roman, and he helped to destroy. And you had a lot of Israelites that were a part of the Roman army. You have something called Sons of Israel in Caesar's service, and it tells you in there that you had a whole lot of Israelites that are not recognized today because they had Greek and Latin names, so they were not recognized as being Jews. If they didn't have an Israelite name, they were not recognized as that. So you had many of them. All right, so the persecution came when those Roman armies started rolling up and started to besiege Jerusalem. And that started in 66 AD. All right, it started, I believe it was around August, if I'm not mistaken, or April of 66 AD, and it ended at the very beginning of 74. So it was about a period of 7 years. And that was the final years in prophecy in the book of Daniel. All right, so it says, I'll read it again. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. Right, the man-child being Yahawashi. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, meaning a great escape. Just like, the Lord gave us, he bore us on eagle's wings to escape out of Egypt. It was a swift deliverance. Well, it was a swift deliverance here to those that were meant to escape. All right, because at that time, many Israelites got caught up in Jerusalem. This was around the time of because Jake would go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. I forget the exact date that 70 AD when the temple was actually destroyed, but we know that the Israelites were coming there 3 times. That's why Yahawashi said, when you see the abomination of desolation stand where it ought not, get the hell out of there, pretty much. All right. So it says, and to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness being so-called Africa. You had other places Jake ran to, but the bulk of them ran into so-called Africa, into her place, because eventually, we would be brought over to this side of the world. This is the place. We read about the place in Hosea 1 and Joel 3, right? It says, where she is nourished for a time and a half a time. That's another way of saying the 1,260 days, the 4 months, the 3.5 days. All right, this is the same thing. So when we fled into the wilderness, into her place, this was what? Over here in the Americas, from the face of the serpent, because when Jake fled out of Jerusalem and fled into so-called Africa, they got the hell away from Esau, from the Roman armies. And the Roman armies came in like that flood. All right. They compassed Jerusalem. And you see, when you look at those different movies or documentaries, and you see the armies of the Romans, you see them coming in like in swarms or like a flood, and that's how they would attack, because they would attack in formation. They had a system on how they would conquer their enemies. It says, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, right? Because they came, to destroy. They came with those armies. There's another scripture, I believe in Job, the 30th chapter, which speaks about the flood. There's a scripture in Psalms 124th chapter, that speaks about, if it had not been for the Lord that was on our side, then we would have been swallowed up by the proud waters. All right, who are those proud waters? The Edomites. It says that he might cause it to be carried away of the flood, right? Because they wanted to destroy Jake back then, because they were tired of the revolts. They were tired of the constant raids. They were tired of the insolence, but that was all the Most High stirring up that pot to fulfill prophecy. See? So the Most High causes controversy. He stirs things up to bring forth his prophecies. This is why we see the great stirring up right now of the MOTB, and all of these things going on right now. These so-called new variants and the stuff, the lockdowns are supposed to be coming back and so on and so forth. Why? Because everything is being prepared for the time of Jacob's trouble. And when it comes to pass, and it will come to pass, you're going to see these false prophets scrambling, to defend their position, or try to rewrite or remix their stance, because they're going to see that they were dead wrong. So it says, I'll read it again. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. Because they were trying to destroy the Israelites that were there. They got busy on them. And the earth helped the woman. How did the earth help the woman? Because she fled out of Israel, out of Jerusalem. And she fled into parts of Africa, and other places. That's how the earth helped the woman, because years ago, this used to be broken down as being the archaeology. This is not talking about that. This is talking about back then, when Jake actually escaped from, the grasp of the Romans. Certain ones of them anyway. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, right? Because eventually, once they got far away from that land, the Roman armies couldn't do nothing. They had plenty to do, because there was still a bunch of Israelites left in the land of Israel, in the land of Jerusalem. All right? It says, and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of the Most High and have the testimony of Yahawashi, right? And that's why you have 60. You could do the research, look up, 70 AD, read up on that history, and you'll find out that it started in 66 AD. I believe that was either April or August of 66, and it ended at the very beginning of 74. And that was from 66, 70 AD was a pivotal year where the temple was destroyed, and then 74 AD, because after the temple was destroyed, there was a lot of Israelites that fled to Masada, which was set up and reinforced by Herod. All right, and they fled up there, and it took a while to get them, because it was a mountain retreat. It was a very good strategic place, but the Lord gave them, Romans, the ability to build a ramp up to it. And eventually, once they got there, there was a suicide pact, according to the history, that the Israelites, by the time they got there, everybody was dead. Pretty much. All right. So that has been Revelation 12. Lord's will, like I said, I want to do like a separate lesson from the 7th verse to about the 12th verse, because that's a whole lesson within itself. And that goes into this time now, after Esau, his empires are finished. The very final thing that's going to happen after they do everything they got to do, the MOTB and all that, is this final war that's going to happen. When World War III breaks out, They're going to be fighting against each other, and Yahawashi, Michael, and the angels are going to come back and destroy them. And that's going to be the ending, but the beginning of Yahawashi's kingdom. All right. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.